Imagine a world where fewer and fewer people ask why, where beliefs are picked up like trends, repeated on autopilot and defended like team gear colours, where cultural heroes, political figures, and even spiritual voices start telling us not just what to think, but what to feel, want, and fear. That world isn't science fiction, it's the air we breathe. The quiet fading of critical thinking isn't a storm on the horizon. It's the slow drizzle we walk through every day, and most of us barely notice we're getting soaked. Pause with me. When was the last time you truly examined something before you shared it? When did you last stop yourself and ask, do I actually believe this, or did I absorb it because it was everywhere? Many of us proudly call ourselves free thinkers, but without noticing, we end up orbiting around the shiny idols of modern life. Celebrities, political tribes, influencers, aesthetics, even certain spiritual personalities. They promise clarity, belonging, and meaning. In exchange, they quietly ask for our unquestioning agreement. This message is an invitation to wake up. Together, we'll trace the hazards of ignorance and the subtle pull of idolatry, how both can numb our independence and quiet the strongest part of us, the ability to think clearly for ourselves. By the end, you won't just understand the mechanics that muffle independent thought, you'll have practical ways to rebuild your inner backbone and stand steady in a noisy world, and stay to the end. There's a simple shift, one you can start today, that often becomes the turning point. Not just for information hygiene, but for identity, integrity, and freedom. Before we dive deep, if this kind of content helps you see through the noise, tap subscribe, drop a like, and share a thought in the comments. You're not just watching another video, you're joining a small movement of people who prefer clarity over comfort. People who dare to ask questions when the crowd falls to silence. Let's start with ignorance, one of the most misunderstood words we use. The ancient thinkers weren't offended by it. They respected it. Socrates taught that wisdom begins by recognizing how little we actually know. That kind of honesty doesn't paralyze us. It energizes the search for truth. But our era often treats ignorance differently. It isn't the humble admission I might be wrong, it's the rigid insistence I'm definitely right even when the facts get complicated. It looks like turning away from nuance because nuance takes effort. It looks like choosing cozy illusions over uncomfortable realities. It looks like confusing feeling informed with being informed, especially online. The internet feeds us rivers of content until we're waterlogged. But if you've ever scrolled for an hour and felt strangely empty, you've tasted this. A flood of data with almost no depth. Algorithms hand us more of whatever we already like, confirm what we already think, and quietly fence off what might challenge us. Ignorance can wear a mask that looks like knowledge. Opinions can sound like facts when they echo loudly enough. Ask yourself, how many convictions in your life are truly yours? And how many grew inside you because they were repeated by voices you trusted, or simply because they were everywhere? Still, ignorance alone doesn't explain the quiet death of critical thinking. There's another force at work: idolatry. Idolatry doesn't require statues or shrines. In our time, it looks like devotion to personalities, parties, brands, and lifestyles. It looks like turning a product into a promise, a leader into a savior, a movement into an identity. When we feel disconnected from our truest self, we often look for someone or something to stand in as our compass. The trade is tempting. An idol offers certainty and belonging. What it asks in return is our uncritical loyalty. Think about the last time you saw someone defend a public figure with near religious fervour, ignoring every counterpoint, or the way entire lifestyles get treated as sacred, beyond question, as if wearing the right symbol could fill the emptiness inside. Idolatry is subtle. It doesn't shout, "Worship me." It whispers, "Relax, cold, don't think too hard. I'll think for you." When we accept that whisper, conformity slips in, dressed up as safety. And conformity, when it becomes a reflex, is the sworn enemy of critical thought. Ask yourself with gentle honesty, are there voices in your life that steer your thinking more than you admit? Beliefs you guard not because you've tested them, but because they came from your family, your group, your tradition, your algorithm. If you're willing, write about one in the comments. Naming it is the beginning of being free of it. Ignorance creates the soil. Idolatry plants the seed. Soon repetition and dogma do the watering, and critical thinking withers, not in one dramatic moment, but by 1,000 tiny surrenders. But there's good news. Whenever independent thought has been threatened, courageous people have stepped forward. The Enlightenment wasn't a mood, it was a dare. Use your own understanding. That dare is calling to us again, maybe more urgently than ever. See why we're so susceptible to manipulation. We have to peer inside the mind. Human brains are efficiency machines. We use shortcuts, mental habits that save energy but sometimes distort reality. Familiar ideas feel truer than they are. Repetition becomes credibility. Simplicity feels safer than complexity, and effort feels like pain. Fear multiplies this effect. Fear of being wrong, fear of being judged, fear of being left out. When fear rises, we crave certainty. Strong voices offer it. Simple stories promise it. Rigid system guarantee it. Follow me, they say, and you won't have to carry the burden of doubt. The relief feels so good we barely notice we handed over our thinking to someone else. Look back at recent decisions. How many were guided by the reasons you examined, and how many by fears you didn't name? If you're brave, share one insight below, naming fear as a way of disarming it. There's another shadow we rarely face, the parts of ourselves we avoid, our insecurity, our hunger for significance, our longing to belong. When we won't look at these directly, we project them outward and cling to external saviors. We forget that no leader, no brand, no tribe can carry the weight of our unfinished inner work. So we give away our power and call it loyalty. Technology complicates everything. We trust ranking systems, trending lists, and recommended for you as if they were neutral. They were not designed for truth. They're designed for attention. That doesn't make them evil. It makes them inadequate as our primary teachers. If the first result feels like the right result, we've subtly outsourced our discernment. And then there's the part none of us like to admit. Often, we don't want to think harder. Thorough thinking can shake our identity. It can upset our group. It can demand we change. The philosopher's phrase bad faith describes the tendency to pretend we don't have choices because choices would make us responsible. Idolatry relieves us of that weight. If the leader is always right, the party is always good, the tribe is always pure, then we don't have to examine ourselves. This is why thoughtlessness is so dangerous. Not because people become monsters overnight, but because ordinary people, good people, stop asking questions. Without questions, power goes unchecked. Without questions, lies wear crowns. Without questions, cruelty can pass as necessary. So what do? Step 1 is awareness. Know the disguises. Ignorance often dresses like certainty. Idols often pose as saviors. Fear often speaks in the voice of common sense. Once you see the costumes, it's harder to be fooled. Step 2 is courage. Courage to stand in the discomfort of I don't know yet. Courage to be the only one in your circle asking, can we verify that? Courage to say, I changed my mind and mean it. Courage won't make life easier. It will make life honest. Hold that thought, because we also have to expose the larger systems that actively benefit when we stop thinking for ourselves. Politics has always known the value of a distracted public. If citizens are tired, overwhelmed, or entertained to death, they're easier to steer with slogans than to persuade with arguments. Language gets trimmed to hashtags and sound bites. Outrage crowds out nuance. The more fragmented our attention becomes, the less room there is for reflection. Consumer culture knows this too. Marketing doesn't try to engage your most skeptical, clear-eyed self. It tries to reach the part of you that's lonely, bored, or wanting to belong. Products become identity badges. We buy meaning instead of building it. And when a purchase doesn't fill the void, we're handed the next promise. Even the news, the place we go for facts, can incentivize engagement over accuracy. Headlines designed to provoke, comment sections engineered for conflict. The feeling of being up to date becomes a substitute for understanding. We get a highlight reel of the world's worst 5 minutes and call it reality. And in social media's arena, the loudest often outrun the wisest. Balanced voices rarely go viral. Extreme takes do. That doesn't mean we should abandon these platforms, but it does mean we must use them with our eyes open. History keeps whispering warnings. Authoritarians rarely start by banning thought. They start by rewarding unthinking loyalty. They flatter their base, demonize dissent, and cultivate dependency. And across the spectrum, from hard politics to niche communities, the pattern repeats whenever people trade responsibility for certainty. Conspiracy thinking can feel like rebellion, but often it's idolatry in a different costume. Trust this special source. Everyone else is lying. We escape one echo chamber only to settle into another. Real thinking doesn't swap idols, it drops them. If this all sounds heavy, take heart. You don't need to change the whole world. You need to reclaim one mind, your own. Every time you pause before sharing, you strengthen a muscle. Every time you say, I don't know, let me check, you step out of the current. Every time you give someone you disagree with a fair listen, you widen the path for reason. Will it cost you? Sometimes. You might stand alone now and then. You might get teased for not picking a side. You might lose the instant approval that comes from chanting the slogan of the day. But history remembers the questioners. Progress is their footprint. So how do we practice this daily? Begin with self-examination. Not the harsh, punishing kind, the honest kind. Ask, where did this belief come from? What evidence would change my mind? Is there a blind spot here because it flatters me or my group? This isn't weakness. It's mental fitness. Commit to the discipline of seeking truth. Truth isn't threatened by questions. It's refined by them. Demand coherence. Ask for sources. Hold ideas long enough to see if they hold you back or pull you forward. Choose real dialogue. Talk to people who disagree in good faith. Not to own them, but to understand what your own position might be missing. If you only ever listen to your side, your view will always be fragile. Strong beliefs welcome tests. Build your courage. That might mean being the first to say, I was wrong. It might mean stepping away from an online brawl. It might mean declining to post a spicy take that you know will farm likes but fog truth. Courage rarely looks glamorous in the moment. Later it looks like integrity. Here's the quiet revelation. Critical thinking isn't just an academic skill. It's an act of freedom. When you think for yourself, you become the author of your life again. You're no longer just a consumer of narratives. You're a maker of meaning. You stop outsourcing your conscience to crowds. You stop renting your identity from your algorithm. Ignorance and idolatry don't just blur facts, they shrink the soul. They train us to accept secondhand living. Waking up is costly and priceless. To think is to take back your humanity. To question is to live with your eyes open. So let's make this real. Where in your life have you been shaped more by the crowd than by conviction? Which beliefs have you carried because they were familiar, not because they were tested? Which fears keep your curiosity on a leash? Name one step, just one, you'll take today to reclaim your mind. Maybe it's reading a full article instead of just the headline. Maybe it's asking someone you respect to challenge your view. Maybe it's creating a 48-hour rule before posting on anything emotionally charged. There's a famous declaration that begins with doubt and ends with freedom. I think, therefore I am. It isn't a slogan. It's a map. Strip away the borrowed certainties. Sit quietly with the questions. When you find what remains, your capacity to reason, reflect, and revise, you find yourself. In the loudest age in history, you still have a choice. Follow blindly or awaken gently. One path gives comfort, the other gives truth. Truth is harder. It is also the only foundation sturdy enough for a life worth living. Ignorance is not innocence. Idolatry is not devotion. Both are cages, gold-plated perhaps, but cages all the same. Critical thought is the key that fits the lock. Let this not be the video you nod through and forget. Let it be a line in the sand. Let it be the quiet vow you make to yourself. My mind, my freedom, my responsibility. Because the drift toward thoughtlessness stops the moment enough of us plant our feet and say, I will examine. I will verify. I will listen. I will learn. I will change. If this resonated with you, join the circle, subscribe, leave your reflection below, and share this with one person who's ready to think out loud with you. Together, we can resist the pull of ignorance, step down our idols, and restore the most powerful gift we've been given, the ability to think, and by thinking, to live free.